My name is Remy. That day, in a school conference room packed with parents and teachers, a video suddenly appeared on the screen. My 12-year-old daughter, Aubrey, held down by her grandmother and her aunt while they ran electric clippers over her head, amid the laughter of adults. Her sobs blended with the harsh buzz. Each pass felt like it was cutting straight into my heart. And the most painful part? They called it a family prank. Have you ever seen your own relatives betray and humiliate your child like that right before your eyes? If it were you, what would you do to get justice? Leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel so you can follow the next part, where I'll tell you why they had no idea. Someone else witnessed everything that day. And that became the turning point that changed everything. I was born and raised in a small town in Oklahoma, where everyone knew each other's names, family stories, and sometimes, the prejudices that never changed. After my dad retired, my parents moved to North Texas to be near Carla. In the white wooden house at the end of a gravel road, I was always the second child. Not just in the literal sense, but in the way my mother would say, Carla's the eldest. She has to come first. Carla, my sister, wasn't just the pride of the family, she was the queen of our high school. She had won the beauty pageant 2 years in a row, brought home a collection of sashes and gold trophies, and filled the living room with framed photos. Whenever guests came over, my mother would give them a tour of Carla's achievements, from the picture of her in a teal evening gown at a pageant to the smiling photo that made the local paper. Me. I had no display corner. My place was usually in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes still smeared with frosting from Carla's victory party. Mom would tell me that being good at housework is what matters, that a daughter should sacrifice for her sister. But that sacrifice only flowed one way. I remember asking Mom for a new pair of sneakers so I could join the school basketball club. She shook her head and said, "What do you need nice shoes for? Carla needs them, she's the one going on stage." Even when I wanted to cut my hair short to stay cool in the summer, she waved it off. "No, short hair will make you look less feminine. Carla suits short hair. Yours should stay long so it's not coarse." I was only 13 then, but I had already started to understand that any request related to expressing myself would be labeled unnecessary. As for my father, he rarely intervened. To him, Carla was the daughter to be proud of, and I was the good kid who keeps quiet. I once thought silence would make my family love me more, but the quieter I became, the farther they pushed me away. At 18, when I got my acceptance letter to the nursing program at a university in Dallas, I cried tears of joy. But that joy was quickly doused. My parents called me into the living room where we sat on the old couch. Mom crossed her arms and said flatly, "So you really plan to abandon the family and move away?" Holding the letter in my hands, I tried to explain that this was a chance to have a stable career, to be able to help them in the future. But Mom only shook her head. "Help? Helping means staying here, looking after the house, pitching in so Carla can prepare for the state beauty pageant. Not running off." Dad stayed quiet the whole time, only sighing, and that sigh hurt more than any scolding. I still decided to go. For the first time in my life, I chose myself over them. On the day I left, Mom didn't see me off. She just stood on the porch, her eyes cold as stone. Dad told me to take care, but didn't hug me. And from that day on, I wore the label of ungrateful child in their eyes. In the years that followed, I rarely contacted my family, only coming home for Thanksgiving or Christmas. Each time, Carla was still surrounded by admiring relatives and friends, while I was met with questions like, "When are you getting married? Working at a hospital must be tiring, huh?" As if my entire life's purpose was to eventually settle down by their standards. Then Carla married a wealthy man and quickly had a daughter, Madison. From a young age, Madison was raised exactly in line with Carla and my mother's mold. Princess dresses, dance classes, and child beauty pageants. Whenever I visited, Carla would smirk and say, "Remy, look at my girl, only 7 and already so poised for the stage." It was both bragging and a pointed reminder that my daughter, Aubrey, didn't measure up to their standards. Aubrey was different from Madison. She loved reading, drawing, and playing guitar. She didn't care for frilly dresses, but her smile could warm anyone's heart. That should have been cherished. But I noticed the way Carla and Mom looked at Aubrey. It was the same calculating gaze they had once used on me, assessing whether she might threaten the spotlight of the chosen one. One Christmas, Carla let slip a comment to my mother when she thought I wasn't listening. Aubrey's getting prettier as she grows. I'm afraid Madison won't stand out like before. My mother replied, her voice low but firm. Don't worry, we know how to keep things balanced. At the time, I felt vaguely uneasy, thinking they were just making another petty comparison. I didn't realize those words were a warning of what was to come, a cruel repeat of what I had endured. Carla began paying close attention to every detail about Aubrey. Her long hair, her simple dresses that suited her, the new sneakers I'd bought to celebrate her high academic achievement. Carla's comments always had a bite. Oh, hair that long must take an hour to wash, huh? What's she wearing those sneakers for? She's not running a race. Aubrey would usually give a small, awkward nod and say nothing. She didn't fully understand yet, but I saw it clearly. This was envy passed down from one generation to the next in my family. I once thought I had left that town and escaped the cycle of comparison and belittlement. But the truth was, it had crept back into my life through family gatherings. And this time, the target wasn't me, it was my daughter. That night shift at the hospital ran longer than I expected. The steady beeping of heart monitors, the soft rush of nurses' footsteps down the hall. I had to stay fully focused. But in my mind, I kept thinking about Madison's birthday party the next morning. Carla had sent the invitation a month earlier, along with a frilly pink card featuring Madison in a ball gown. Make sure Aubrey's dressed nicely. This will be an unforgettable party. Carla had added a smiley face emoji. I ignored the edge in her tone, choosing to believe that at least for a birthday, everyone would set aside the petty rivalries. Aubrey was more excited than anyone. She had just received a statewide Academic Excellence Award, a milestone I knew would make her proud all year. I wanted her reward to be something special. So instead of fixing her hair at home as usual, I booked an appointment for her at a professional salon a coworker recommended. Since my parents now lived in North Texas, close enough for me to reach them after a night shift, it was easy to take Aubrey there in the morning. That morning, the North Texas sky was a clear blue, as if it approved of our little plans. I had just come off an intense shift, my eyes still blurry from lack of sleep, but when I saw Aubrey standing in the living room, the fatigue disappeared. She wore the pale blue dress I'd bought last Easter, the one that always made her twirl in front of the mirror. Her white ballet flats and a small gift box wrapped in cream paper were in her hands. Her soft curls were still in place from the night before, held by pearl pins. I took her to Marissa's salon, Marissa being the stylist I trusted most. Aubrey sat patiently for nearly an hour, her eyes shining as Marissa braided her hair to the side, adding tiny pearls. You look like a Disney princess, Marissa said, and I saw her eyes light with pride. The gift for Madison was something Aubrey had made herself, a pastel beaded necklace strung bead by bead over 2 weeks. I want Madison to wear it as a good luck charm, she said. I didn't interfere, only helped her choose a box and wrapping paper. When I checked the time, it was about time to take Aubrey to her grandmother Marilyn's house, where Carla was hosting Madison's birthday. I smoothed her hair once more, making sure it framed her face perfectly. You're sure you want to go ahead without me? I can always ask our neighbor Jane to watch you until I finish my shift. Aubrey shook her head, a look of certainty on her face. It's fine, Mom. Grandma and Aunt Carla will be there. I'll help them set the table. We drove down the familiar gravel road leading to Grandma Marilyn's 2-story wooden house. The white painted trim, the rose trellis on the porch, and the smell of baked goods drifting from the kitchen, all of it made the place look like the safest spot in the world. I stopped in the driveway and opened the car door for Aubrey. She turned and kissed my cheek. Come early, okay? I want you to take pictures when we cut the cake. I'll do my best, I said, hiding the exhaustion in my voice. Aubrey hugged the gift box tight and hurried up the porch steps. Marilyn opened the door with a wide smile. I nodded in greeting, handed Aubrey over to her, and went back to my car. On the drive back to the hospital, I kept seeing that last image of my daughter that morning, her pearl-pinned hair glittering in the sun, her small shoulders, and her eager steps. I had no idea it would be the last time I saw her looking that way. That shift ended later than expected because a newly admitted patient needed to be stabilized before handoff. I walked out to the parking lot, inhaling the cool late afternoon air, picturing Aubrey waiting on her grandma's porch, maybe showing me photos with Madison and the other kids. When my car turned onto my mother's street, the sun had turned the sky to honey. I slowed as I noticed the front door slightly open. Then Aubrey stepped out. I had to blink twice to believe it was my daughter. The carefully curled hair, each pearl pin I'd adjusted the night before, was gone. In its place were uneven, close-cropped patches, some shaved down to white, others sticking up raggedly. Stray hair clung to her dress and shoulders. Her eyes were red and slightly swollen, but she pressed her lips together. The way she stood, arms hugging the now-dented gift box, made my chest tighten painfully. I turned off the engine, rushed over and knelt to her level. "Aubrey, what happened?" She glanced at me, then looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "Aunt Carla told me not to try to stand out more than Madison." In that instant I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. Outwardly I kept my tone even. "Who did this to you?" She didn't answer, only pressed her lips tighter as if one more word would break her composure. I rested my hand on her shoulder, feeling her small body rigid with tension. Without pushing further, I opened the car door for her. As I closed it, I caught her reflection in the glass, a face I'd never seen on her before. Hurt, embarrassed, and somehow stripped of a part of herself. We drove in hushed quiet. Outside, the roadside trees glowed gold in the sunset. Inside, the air felt frozen. I wanted to pull her into my arms, but my hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Aubrey sat curled up, staring out the window. After a while, she finally spoke, her voice barely a breath. I tried to say no, but they didn't listen. I glanced over, forcing down the heat rising in my throat. "Did it hurt?" "No. But," she trailed off, clutching the gift box as if it were the only intact thing left from that morning. I knew exactly what that "but" meant. It wasn't about her scalp being yanked or the roughness of the clippers. It was about being forced to stand still, to endure, and knowing the people doing it were the very ones she trusted. I drew a deep breath, lowering my voice. "Aubrey, I need you to know, this isn't your fault." She looked at me, her eyes still wet, searching for certainty. "But there are family, real family, wouldn't hurt you like this." She turned away, her small shoulders trembling. I let the quiet stand, not pressing for more. We drove the rest of the way with only the sound of tires on asphalt and an occasional sigh. When we parked in the garage, Aubrey stayed still for a few seconds as if she wasn't ready to get out. I came around to open her door. The porch light cast a yellow glow over her uneven hair, a sight I knew I'd never forget. I wrapped my arms around her, and this time she didn't hold back, leaning into me. No sobs, no wailing, only uneven breaths. And though I wanted to scream, I stayed calm, knowing what she needed most now was a safe place to stand after her world had been shattered in one afternoon. That evening, after a dinner neither of us touched, Aubrey curled up on the sofa under a thin blanket. The warm light in the living room made her eyes look even more shadowed. I poured her a mug of hot cocoa, set it on the table, and sat across from her, keeping my tone gentle. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" She stayed quiet for a long time, staring at the cocoa, twisting a loose thread on the blanket. Then she drew in a breath, as if gathering all her courage. "Aunt Carla and Grandma held me down. Grandpa just watched." My heart clenched, but I kept my expression steady. "They held you, to do what?" "To cut my hair." Her voice was hoarse. I said, "No, Mom. I said I didn't want to, but Grandma said, don't make a big deal out of it, and Aunt Carla made me sit." Her shoulders trembled. I leaned forward and took her hand. "And then?" "Grandpa didn't say anything. He just ate cake." Madison stood next to them, laughing. When Aunt Carla ran the clippers over the first handful, I heard Grandma say, "So you remember your place." I swallowed hard, forcing my anger down. Was someone filming this? I thought I heard someone recording. Aubrey blinked, as if remembering something. She reached for her phone from her hoodie pocket, unlocked it, and handed it to me. A new message had come in that afternoon from Leah in Madison's class. It read, "I think you should have this," with a video attached. I pressed play. The living room at my mother's house appeared on the screen. I recognized every framed photo. In the video, Carla stood behind Aubrey, one hand gripping her hair, the other guiding the buzzing clippers, clumps falling to the floor. Marilyn stood with her arms crossed, lips pressed together but eyes full of satisfaction. In the corner, Grandpa sat in a chair, fork in hand, chewing cake without a glance. Carla's voice rang clear. Consider it a lesson so you know your place. A few people in the background laughed. Madison peeked into the frame, saying something inaudible over the noise. Then I heard Leah, who was filming, mutter, "Oh my God," like she couldn't believe it herself. I was about to stop the video when I noticed a man near the window. Not family, not anyone I knew. He wore a plaid shirt and a press badge around his neck. His face was turned slightly as he spoke to someone off camera. I frowned. "Aubrey, do you know who this man is?" I pointed at him. "I'm not sure. Maybe a friend of Grandpa's. I just know he came early and had a big camera." A flash of memory surfaced. Years ago, my father knew a freelance photographer named Hank who sometimes shot local events. I'd never cared before. Now it mattered. I replayed the clip, focusing on him. He wasn't just standing there. He lifted his camera several times and took pictures. "Was he there for the whole party?" I asked. "Yeah, I saw him eating cake with everyone," Aubrey said with a nod. I closed the phone, my hand tightening unconsciously. Someone outside the family had witnessed everything. And not witnessed, it looked like he had proof. A journalist. Someone who knew how to keep records and had a reason to hold on to those shots. Aubrey watched me, waiting. "Mom, what are you going to do?" I touched the uneven patches of her hair. "First, I'm backing up this video. Then I'm going to find that man. If he has photos, that's more evidence. Do you understand?" She bit her lip, then nodded slightly. "Mom, I don't want them to think I made this up." "They won't be able to, Aubrey. When the truth is right in front of them, no one can twist it." I got up, grabbed my laptop, and plugged in my phone to transfer the video to my hard drive. While the files loaded, I heard Aubrey let out a long breath, as if part of a heavy weight had been lifted. She held her mug of cocoa and finally took a sip. For me, though, the weight only grew heavier. Because I knew this fight wasn't about hair alone. It was about cruelty, about the pattern of using family power to control and belittle, and about a lesson they wanted to impose. A cruel lesson once aimed at me, now repeated on my daughter. I wasn't going to let it slide as a family matter, ever again. I didn't pick up the phone to call Carla or my mother that night. Years of dealing with people who twisted the story in their favor had taught me that confronting them too soon only gave them time to build their defenses. This time I needed to move step by step, carefully and deeply. The first thing I did was back up the video in 3 different places. My personal hard drive, a password-protected cloud account, and a brand new USB drive I had bought at a 24-hour convenience store. I placed the USB in my jewelry box, where Aubrey thought only necklaces and silver rings were kept, because I knew she wouldn't touch it. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the contact list for a family law firm specializing in domestic abuse, one a coworker had once recommended. It was late, but I still sent an email with the video attached, the subject line reading, "Urgent evidence of physical assault on a minor." In the email, I outlined the context, the relationships between the people involved, and Aubrey's current emotional state. When I hit send, I realized my hands were damp with sweat. I wasn't used to asking for help, but right now my daughter's safety and her voice mattered more than any pride. Next, I went to the County Child Protection Agency's website and filled out an online report. The description of incident box made me pause, not because I didn't know what to write, but because I had to condense my daughter's pain into sterile, official language. I described the act of holding her down, cutting her hair, the humiliating remarks, and the presence of multiple adults who watched but didn't intervene. I also noted, this act is not only physical assault but also psychological bullying, leaving severe emotional trauma. The report was submitted at 1 a.m. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. But in my mind, I kept seeing the man with the camera in the corner of the room. I dug through my memory and recalled a community gathering a few years back, when my father had introduced him as Hank Miller, a freelance photographer who sometimes shot for the local paper and small-town events. I searched his name on social media. His profile didn't reveal much, but his phone number was listed in the contact info. I typed out a message. "Hello, I'm Remy, daughter of Marilyn and Jack. I believe we met at Madison's birthday party. I'm wondering if you took photos that day. If so, I urgently need to speak with you about a serious matter." In less than 10 minutes, my phone rang. A deep, slightly hoarse voice spoke. "Remy, right? I figured you'd get in touch. I saw what happened to your daughter. Honestly, I wasn't planning to get involved, but I took quite a few shots." I tightened my grip on the phone. Mr. Hank, do those photos show faces clearly? Very clearly. I was using a 70 to 200mm lens. Captured every expression. Carla, your mother, even the kid laughing during the haircut. A chill went through me. Could you send me a few of them? I won't send them online. Best to meet in person. This is sensitive and I don't want the photos being shared without control. Can you come to Cornerstone Cafe on Main Street tomorrow morning? I agreed immediately. Before hanging up, Hank added, Remy, I'll testify if needed. I've been in this business 30 years, and I've never seen something so disgraceful in a family. When I put the phone down, Aubrey was standing in her bedroom doorway, her eyes still red from lack of sleep. Mom, who was that? Someone who was there today. He took photos. And he's willing to help us. She walked over and sat beside me. Are you really going to take them to court? If that's what it takes for everyone to see the truth, I will. Aubrey was quiet for a moment, then rested her head on my shoulder. That trust was both a driving force and a heavy weight. I knew I couldn't afford a single wrong move. That night, I spread out paper and pen, writing down the entire incident from start to finish. Every detail, every word, every witness. I arranged everything in chronological order so that when it reached the lawyer or the authorities, nothing could be overlooked. I wrote until the sky began to lighten, my body exhausted but my resolve unwavering. Tomorrow I would meet Hank. And once those photos were in my hands, this wouldn't be a child's word against an adult's anymore. It would be the undeniable truth with images and sound that no one could refute. The next morning, I had stepped out of the shower when my phone started buzzing nonstop. On the screen, Carla's name flashed. I stood still for a few seconds before answering, curious to hear her tone this time. Her voice came immediately, skipping any greeting. Remy, I don't know what to do. Madison's getting torn apart at school. Some kids are calling her cruel, others are sending threats. I heard someone spreading news about yesterday's party. I leaned against the kitchen counter, my voice calm. Is that so? I know we had a bit of a misunderstanding yesterday, but this is getting out of hand. Some of the other moms are asking if Madison really took part in that haircut thing. I said nothing, listening to her quickened breathing. Did you post anything? I know you're angry, but please take it down. Madison's only 13, she can't handle this kind of pressure. I narrowed my eyes, staring into the empty space ahead. Carla, I haven't posted anything. If the news is spreading, it's probably from someone else at the party. There were plenty of people there, weren't there? There was a brief pause before her voice dropped. I don't know. But everyone's thinking you started it. I could hear the restrained sob in her voice. Part of me wanted to fire back with sarcasm, but I held my tongue. That pause only made her more uneasy. Remy, are you listening to me? Please help me this one time. I hung up without promising anything. Less than 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was my mother. I sat at the dining table and put her on speaker. Remy, what are you doing? The whole town is talking. Are you trying to drag this family's name through the mud for everyone to laugh at? I haven't said a word to anyone, Mom. Then why does everyone know? Why are people calling me asking about the haircut? Take that video down right now. I sipped my coffee, calmer than I expected myself to be. Mom, that video has never been online. If someone is leaking information, it's not from me. Her voice rose sharply. Don't shift the blame. You always think you're right, but the whole family pays the price. Stop this before it goes too far. I didn't answer, letting the sound of her quick breathing and scolding spill from the speaker. When she finally stopped to take a breath, I simply said, if it's going too far, it's because of what happened. Not because someone repeated it. I hung up. By noon, Carla called again. This time her voice wasn't frantic. It was pleading. Remy, I admit we didn't handle things right yesterday. But Madison, she's only a kid. You don't want her to get hurt, do you? I let out a dry laugh. Carla, yesterday Aubrey was only a kid too. And what did you do to her? The line went silent. Then she tried again. It was a moment of anger, and Mom was there too. Yes. And Mom didn't stop it. Do you hear what that means, Carla? That the two adults my daughter trusted most both chose to side with the person hurting her. She started crying, her sobs breaking into fragmented lines about wanting the party to go smoothly, and never thinking it would be misunderstood. I let her talk until her last word faded. Carla, I haven't done anything to spread this. If people know, it's because the witnesses spoke. And maybe it's because they thought it was wrong. I heard her sigh, weary. So you're not going to help me, are you? I'm not going to hide the truth. When the call ended, I set the phone on the table. In the quiet house, the only sound was the steady tick of the clock. I knew they'd now start scrambling to control the narrative, and the harder they tried, the more their fear would show. I didn't need to interfere. Sometimes saying nothing is the clearest mirror of what they've done. 3 days later, I got an email from Madison's principal, asking me to attend an urgent meeting with the school board and the parents involved. Her serious tone during the confirmation call left no room for doubt. This had gone far beyond a family matter. That day, the school conference room was packed. A long table sat in the middle with the school board on one side and chairs for parents on the other. Carla sat between my mother, Marilyn, and Madison, all three with tense faces. My father wasn't there, but I recognized a few other parents, neighbors or friends of Carla's. The principal began. Thank you all for being here. We've received a video regarding a serious incident that took place at Mrs. Marilyn's home during student Madison's birthday party, and it needs to be addressed immediately. Her eyes shifted to me. I stood, feeling every gaze land on me. I'm Remy, mother of Aubrey. My daughter was held down and had her hair cut against her will at this party by her aunt and grandmother. This happened in front of many people, including other students. I placed a USB drive on the table and slid it toward the principal. A tech staff member plugged it into the large wall-mounted screen. The video began. Each frame played, Carla gripping Aubrey's hair, forcing her head down, my mother standing nearby, arms crossed, Madison smiling and saying something, another girl turning away. Then Carla's voice rang out, crystal clear, "Consider it a lesson, so you know your place." Murmurs of disapproval rose from the parents' side. An older woman frowned. "My God, these are children." When the video ended, no one spoke for several seconds. Carla kept her head down, lips pressed tight. Marilyn tried to maintain composure, but her eyes darted constantly. The principal looked up, her tone heavy. "Mrs. Marilyn, Carla, this behavior is unacceptable, especially in front of other students. We will have to report this to the district education board." I turned toward them. Carla started. "We wanted to teach her a lesson. We didn't think it would." "Cutting a child's hair in front of a crowd is not a lesson," I interrupted, my voice low but sharp as steel. "It's humiliation." Marilyn glanced at her daughter but stayed silent. The board members took notes, and the principal ended the meeting with an announcement that a formal statement would follow, and that families should avoid contact until the investigation was complete. Outside the school, I took Aubrey's hand. She walked close beside me, quiet but with a warm, firm grip. We didn't go home, we drove straight to the county police department. Inside, the air was cool, carrying the familiar scent of paper and ink found in public offices. Grounded me. I had already arranged to meet Detective Casey, the officer assigned to our case. My lawyer, Mrs. Harris, was there early. Detective Casey invited us into a small room and set a recorder on the table. Mrs. Harris nodded at me, opened her briefcase and took out the USB with the video, printed photos from the phone and screenshots of the text messages. "We are filing charges for assault and physical abuse of a minor, and requesting a no-contact order between Mrs. Marilyn, Carla and Aubrey," Mrs. Harris stated firmly. Casey plugged in the USB. As the video played again, I watched her face. First focused, then frowning, and finally, when Carla's words rang out, a flash of disbelief. "This evidence is very clear," Casey said, jotting quickly in the report. "We'll open the case file today and forward it to the prosecutor's office." Aubrey was asked a few basic questions. She answered concisely, steady and unshaken. Sitting next to her, I studied her expression. There was something in her eyes now, resolve, that I had never seen in a 12-year-old. As we wrapped up, Mrs. Harris slid another set of papers toward Casey. "This is an emergency protective order request. We're asking the court to prohibit any direct or indirect contact with Aubrey during the investigation." Casey took it, skimmed it, and nodded. "We'll prioritize this." By the time we left the station, the afternoon shadows had begun to stretch. I took a deep breath. It wasn't relief, not yet. This was only the beginning. But at least the first step had been taken. Aubrey looked up at me, her dark brown eyes unwavering. Mom, I think this time they won't dare do anything again. We'll make sure of that, Aubrey. A week after the no-contact order was issued, I took Aubrey to see a stylist I knew through a coworker at the hospital. Her name was Lena, a former lead stylist at an upscale salon in Houston, who now volunteered her time for an organization supporting women and children affected by abuse. When we walked in, Lena was already waiting at the door, her warm smile and bright eyes seeming to embrace Aubrey. Hey there, sweetheart. Today we're going to make this hair truly yours, okay? Lena said, her voice as gentle as a sea breeze. Aubrey looked a little shy at first, but once Lena guided her into the chair, draped the cape over her and began chatting, I could see her relaxing. They talked about school, how Aubrey preferred drawing to dancing, and about the kitten Lena had just adopted. Lena trimmed away the damaged sections, shaping a slightly angled bob with long bangs that brushed Aubrey's cheekbones and framed her face. When Aubrey held up the mirror, she was quiet for a few seconds, then smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen since that day. I look so different. Different in the way you want, not the way someone else decides, I replied. From that day, Aubrey began to regain some of her confidence. I didn't push her to forget what had happened, but I encouraged her to find a way to make it a story she could tell without feeling small. We joined a support group for children impacted by family abuse. There, Aubrey met other kids who had gone through similar things. Some teased for their looks, some forced into things they didn't want to do. At the first meeting, she sat quietly, clutching my hand. But by the third, she raised her hand to speak. I think sometimes people say, it's just hair, or it's just a joke, but really, it's how they make you feel like you don't matter. And that hurts more than anything. The room went still for a beat, then heads nodded in understanding. I felt a deep, quiet pride, not because she was instantly strong, but because she dared to take those small steps out of the shadows. As for me, I knew we needed a new start. Our old house in the Dallas suburbs held too many memories disrupted by unannounced visits and pressure-filled calls from family. I began looking for another place. Somewhere we could hear the ocean instead of a phone ringing in the night. 3 months later, I signed the papers for a small house in Galveston, just a few minutes' walk from the beach. It was painted soft blue, with a wide wooden porch perfect for a swing. The kitchen opened to a large window where morning light spilled across the water. On moving day, I lingered in the new living room, letting my eyes wander, surrounded by boxes, feeling an unfamiliar lightness. There was no one outside waiting for me to send money to cover their utility bills. No more text messages hinting at a child's duty. I had cut off all financial support to my parents, a hard but necessary choice to set clear boundaries. That night, we sat on the porch eating pizza and listening to the waves. Aubrey leaned on my shoulder, sketchbook in hand. Mom, I want to draw this house. Go ahead. This is your house. As she bent over her drawing, I looked out at the star-dusted sky. I knew the road ahead was still long. There would be moments when old memories returned, questions from outsiders. But here, between the waves and the sea breeze, we had a new foundation. And most importantly, Aubrey knew her voice would be heard, never again drowned out by fake laughter or baseless scolding. The house in Galveston wasn't only a refuge. It was a statement that we had stepped out of the old cycle, where my daughter no longer had to shrink herself to please others, and I no longer had to bear burdens disguised as family obligations. On the morning of sentencing, Galveston's sky was covered in a thin veil of clouds. I brought Aubrey early, her hand firmly in mine. Even though her presence wasn't required, I wanted her to hear firsthand what the law had to say, so she would know her voice had not fallen into a void. The courtroom wasn't large, but it felt full with both families present, lawyers, a few local reporters, and members of the child protection group I belonged to. At the defendant's table, Carla and my mother, Marilyn, kept their posture neat, though fatigue shadowed their eyes. Madison was required to sit in the back with a social worker. The judge read the sentence in an even, measured tone. Based on video evidence, witness testimony, and investigative findings, the court finds Ms. Carla and Mrs. Marilyn guilty of the misdemeanor physical assault of a minor, with aggravating circumstances due to humiliation. Sentence: 12 months probation, mandatory completion of an anger management course, and supervision for 18 months. The clerk's pen scratched against the record. I heard an exhale from behind me, likely a reporter. The judge looked at Madison. As a participant who encouraged the act, the court recommends and will monitor a minimum of 12 counseling sessions within 6 months to ensure understanding of the consequences of one's actions toward others. Madison bowed her head, her shoulders trembling slightly. Carla glanced back at her but said nothing. My lawyer allowed herself a discreet smile. She leaned toward me and whispered, "This outcome has lasting weight. They'll be monitored and any violation will bring heavier consequences." When the hearing ended, we stepped outside. The midday sunlight made me squint. A few reporters approached, but I kept it brief. We believe every child has the right to be safe in their own family. Today is a small step toward affirming that. That afternoon, we returned to our little seaside home. I poured us each a glass of lemonade and we went out to the balcony. The late-day ocean was deep blue, waves curling into white ribbons against the shore. Aubrey leaned on the railing, her freshly cut hair brushing her shoulders, lifting in the wind. She stared into the distance for a moment, then turned to me, her voice soft but steady. "I feel relieved that they can't touch me anymore." I rested my hand on her shoulder, feeling her small warmth. "That's right. Now no one gets to take anything from you unless you want them to." Below us, the seabirds skimmed the water, gliding as if the storms behind them no longer mattered. And here, on the balcony of this little house, I knew we were learning to fly in our own way. What would you think if your own family, the ones meant to protect you, were the first to hurt you? For me, this story isn't about a haircut. It's about the right to safety, respect, and self-determination, even when you're young. If it were you, what would you do in my place? Would you forgive and stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you stand up and say your boundaries cannot be erased? Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly want to hear your perspective. And if you want to keep following along, hearing real stories, sometimes painful but always full of strength, about family, choices, and finding our way back to ourselves, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because somewhere in these stories, you might see a piece of your own journey.